Okay, so second roundup review of the week. Yes, I know that I already did a roundup review, and I know you guys might be getting a little sick of it, but I do have 5 movies that have come out in the summer that I do need to review. So decided just the normal 5 movie format. I am using my headset, my gaming headset, as a mic here, just because my other mic is broken. You guys may already know that. So just letting you know, that's why the sound quality may not be as good. But yeah, here we go. Let's just not really waste any time. You guys know how this works. Let's get into the roundup review. This is going to be the first movie I talk about just because I have the least amount to say about it. And I really want to get on to the good stuff. Reminiscence may not be the worst movie I've seen all year, but it definitely is the least memorable. Even though the premise was great, Hugh Jackman is giving it his all as usual, and seemingly you had the right people behind the camera, the movie just didn't execute the way it should have. All the dialogue was super stiff and almost laughable at times, the plot made completely no sense and felt ass backwards the entire runtime, and it was just lame. Next to nothing happened throughout the entire movie. And even when the action really started to pick up, it was just super clumsy. The entire movie takes the worst elements of stuff like Inception and The Matrix and just amps them up to 11. Instead of being this sleek, twisty sci fi thriller, it was just a bland ball of nothing and left me with barely anything to talk about. It wasn't the worst movie I've seen all year, but it certainly was a negative experience. I mean, the cinematography was bland as hell, the script was a dumpster fire. What else do you want for me to say about this movie? This was an absolutely lifeless experience, and I won't be remembering this movie whatsoever. Kind of ironic, huh? Reminiscence gets a C minus. And now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the movies I really wanted to showcase. Starting off with a movie I've been itching to see since it was released in theaters a little over a month ago, now almost 2 months ago, The Green Knight is seemingly a lot of people's pick for the movie of the year so far, and I honestly get it. Even though I might not be as in love with it as everyone else, I still really enjoyed myself with this one. I think it goes without saying the Green Knight is visually breathtaking. Every shot, to the way it's composed and angled, to the lighting and framing of it, is just beautiful. Not only are the backgrounds and set design mesmerizing, but David Lowery's eye for framing a shot just perfectly is on full display here. This is the kind of movie where every frame would be a beautiful picture, and it was just straight eye candy for the entire runtime. Much props also has to be given to the entire cast, but mainly Dev Patel. His performance is the driving force of the movie and is absolutely, he just kills it. Even though I knew he was a pretty solid actor from Lion a couple of years ago, I feel like he completely entered a new realm of being a phenomenal actor with this movie. He was brilliant. Now, the movie's one major flaw is also one of its strengths, so it's going to be a little hard selling my opinion here, but just stick with me. The fact that this movie goes all in with the folktale, drawn out, completely faithful to the style and tone of what it's trying to accomplish, is great. However, that can make for some very odd and unnecessary moments that just feel kind of awkward. Without going into too much detail, let's just say this movie's runtime could have been trimmed a decent amount, or at the very least having the draft looked over a few more times. There's a lot of fat to be trimmed here, and honestly, it can take me out of the movie at some points. Other than that, though, The Green Knight was a joy. From the stunning visuals, the very folktale atmosphere, and David Lowery's excellent direction, I have to give The Green Knight an A minus. Our next movie was way up there in terms of excitement for me. We've all been waiting for the DCU to right the wrongs of the disaster that was Suicide Squad 2016, especially now since most of their output has been on an upwards trajectory, with the exclusion of Wonder Woman 1984, of course. That movie was mediocre as hell. Even if I may have wildly different opinions about the DCU than most people, I can still agree on one thing. There was a lot riding on this movie. And honestly, I never once doubted it. The trailers leading up to it, James Gunn directing, the entire cast looking star-studded, everything felt like a recipe to make an incredible R-rated superhero movie, and honestly, that's exactly what we got. The Suicide Squad did not disappoint in the slightest. First of all, the overall tone of this movie was its strongest aspect. The mix of serious, disturbing violence that has a lot of weight to it, to sleek, badass action sequences, to then not taking itself seriously at all, was just perfect. James Gunn couldn't have been a better choice to behind the camera for this one, and his presence there is just felt throughout the entire movie. All the songs, the mashup of violence and humor, having one of the best casts of characters in all comic book movies in general, the camera movement, the editing, all of it is fantastic, and most of the credit has to be given to Gunn. I really wish I could break down each and every little part of this movie that I love because it's just jam-packed with smaller details that just make the entire movie. The cast absolutely killed it, with Idris Elba really getting his time to shine and giving his best performance ever. Margot Robbie having the best interpretation of Harley Quinn we will ever have in movie form. John Cena being great. Even smaller roles like Pete Davidson and Michael Rooker were fantastic in this film. Characters who I was worried could come off as being obnoxious stole the show. Sharkman was hilarious. I was cracking up with everything coming out of his mouth. Rick Flag was redeemed here, and the Polka Dot Man was incredible, being one of the most well-written and strongest characters in comic book movie history. I forgot to mention this here in the script, but the rat girl, I don't know her name in the movie. I'm sorry, I forgot, but she was fantastic. Also, one of my new favorite characters in all of the DCEU or just comic book movies in general. Great cast of characters here, all of them well written, very dynamic, just great. Anyway, the villain, the ending, the songs, the editing. I could go on and on about how much I love this movie, and it is also a very strong candidate for my best of the year list. I wish I could go into more detail, but I'm going to wait until I get another chance to see it in full to release my spoiler review. But for now, I'm going to give the Suicide Squad a very strong A minus, like teetering on an A, and move on. Sneaking this one in here at the last second, I was told by many this was their favorite movie of the year. It dropped on Amazon Prime not that long ago, and I decided to check it out myself. And honestly, I was a little bit let down by The Courier. Not to say that it was a bad movie in the slightest, I just was expecting more. It was a very riveting and classical spy movie with Benedict Cumberbatch giving just a phenomenal performance as always. But I don't know, it was never anything more than that. It felt very similar to the movie Bridge of Spies that came out a couple of years ago, where it was just, yes, I could tell this is well made, the story is great, the visuals are fantastic, it has really good historical accuracies, it is very much an Oscar bait movie, but not in a pretentious kind of way. But I don't know, this movie never goes outside of the box. It never stands out from that crowd of like Cold War era historical period pieces, and this movie is kind of nothing more than that. Like I said, I did enjoy this movie. I was very entertained. I loved Benedict Cumberbatch's performance. I thought the story was pretty riveting, but it kind of left my memory right after I saw it, and for that, I'm going to have to give The Courier a light B. Still enjoyed the movie, though. I cannot say that I didn't enjoy it. That's not what I'm saying. I still really, really enjoyed this movie, but I was a little let down by it. So a B is still a very positive rating. I just have to say this is still a very good movie, but I was a little let down by it. Lastly, and this may come as a shock to most, we have my favorite movie of the bunch, Candyman. Another delay from 2020. I've had this movie on my radar pretty much from the first trailer. I've seen the original Candyman once as a little kid and had never seen any of the sequels. I had no memories really growing up with the Candyman other than being terrified of it. So I can say without bias that I loved this movie. It captured everything I wanted it to and way, way more. Not only is it one of the most effectively disturbing horror movies to come out in a while, but the narrative feels incredibly cohesive and rewarding. Just the right amount of twists and turns were layered throughout. The characters are all felt lively and relatable. Everything surrounding urban legends, gentrification, and falling too deep into the rabbit hole of conspiracies for the sake of art are all themes that were woven into the story so well. When I read some of the reviews of this thing calling it overstuffed and forceful with its messages, I found that to be just not what Okay, I'm going to restart here. I found myself vehemently disagreeing. I felt like the film handled all of these things so well and is what made it stand out amongst the crowd so much. Now, I was slightly lying when I said I have no biases coming into this movie. Having heard Jordan Peele was involved with it, both as a co-writer and executive producer, really got me excited. Both of his feature films, Get Out and Us, have been some of my favorite horror movies the past couple of years. And while this isn't his film, we'll get to the director in a second, his fingerprints are felt all throughout this film. His signature style of dialogue and his way of crafting a sharp, extremely interesting, and exciting horror narrative is really on full effect here. Yet another reason why he's becoming one of my favorite voices in horror today. But the majority of the credit of this movie being so great has to go with Nia DaCosta, also co-writing the flick. You can tell this was an extremely important movie for her and how much she cared about not only the source material but the themes and messages throughout the movie. Everything is there for a reason and the messages being relayed hit with a punch, but don't go overboard into being preachy. Not only that, but the cinematography and the way the movie is shot is just masterful, using a ton of wide shots to really engulf you in the scenes, while the actual disturbing, thrilling sequences are closer up and terrifying. Even if it may not be the most popular opinion, I adore the new Candyman. It stands tall in the world of horror sequels, and honestly, at this point, surpasses the original in my head. I was hooked, line and sinker with this movie, and it's a strong candidate for my best of the year list. Definitely going to be high up there. Candyman 2021 gets a light A. So, thank you all for watching my latest roundup review. Finally got this off my plate. Finally got to reviewing these movies. Sorry if this felt a little rushed. I wanted to get this out here. Wanted to get my thoughts out on these movies. So, yeah. Other than that, I will see you guys in a little bit.